Hi everyone. This time I'm starting on a new series about metallic, shiny and glittery paints. There's so much variety now available. We'll start working from basic through to more complex techniques. First off, we'll make patterns drawn back into plain printed paints. We'll work with some basic stencil techniques using 2-colour prints, and then I'm going to move on using a wider variety of paints and layers and see where we end up. This is one of the simplest things that you can do with your jelly plate. So I'm going to be working with my Cheap and Cheerful gold glitter paint, and there are two options. One is to put some glitter down and print a layer off first, and the other is just to work with a straight glitter and paint mix. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to put down a layer of glitter and print that off onto my fabric piece. And this will just give you an overall background. And the reason I'm doing this is sometimes without some sort of background, just the white can really just look a bit, I don't know, it looks a bit ho-hum. I don't particularly like the look of the stark white fabric. So I've chosen to do a glitter background, which is just going to be a really straightforward roller of glitter onto my fabric. Super quick. And then I'm going to clear that plate and re-roll it. But this time I'm going to use one of the tips I showed you in the introduction to metallic paints, what you need to know video, which will be linked in the description below. And you will see there that I'm going to mix some acrylic paint with the glitter just to give it a little bit more oomph. It'll show up better on here. So just pulling this initial glitter layer, and you can see the contrast to the white fabric up there. So it's just a little bit creamy yellow colour, and that's just going to dry that fabric, and I will come back in very quickly with a mix of glitter, the same glitter paint and another acrylic. Right, so I'm going to mix some of this Indian yellow hue paint with my gold glitter paint. And the Indian yellow hue is transparent, so that should help make sure that the colour's not too strong. And I'm just going to put some of the glitter paint in, and I've just got a small spatula. I might just put a little bit more glitter in that. It will give me a fairly strong yellow. Let's get that onto the plate. And the other thing I'm going to be using with this is my wooden fork, because it's got soft rounded tines, and I can scrape patterns in here and it's not going to damage the plate. Now, I've rolled this out and I'm ready to go in with my fork and just make an array of marks. You can use anything on this, it doesn't have to be a fork, but just make sure that whatever it is that you're using doesn't have sharp points, because you really don't want to damage your plate in any way at all. And having something with soft edges, thing you've got which is not going to damage your plate is fine. And just remember, always work right out to the edges of your plate, and that will give you a better look overall. Right, I think I'm just about there. So I'm taking that fabric which has already got the glitter layer printed on it, and I'm placing this down here and getting my favourite flat bottomed glass and pressing that down over the top. And you can actually see on here, even through the fabric, you can see some of those edges. I always prefer to put a weight on top of these so that I get maximum pressure across the whole plate. That gives me the best print outcome, and that's what I'm after. Right, here's the fabric just coming off. And as you can see, a simple print with a lovely pattern of curves or waves, however you'd like to describe it. Now I'm going to do a variation on that very basic print with glitter. I'm doing a very dark colour, and what I was after was like an indigo blue, but to be honest, I don't have a paint that's quite the right colour. So I'm going to mix some black paint and a little bit of blue paint to get at least a high contrast, even if it's not exactly an indigo blue. And once I've mixed this, I will then add some glitter to this as well. That's actually turned at a sort of a dark, smoky blue grey. Not quite the indigo I was after, but that's okay. I think I can work with this. And again, I'm going to put some of my cheap glitter paint in here as well. I might have to renew my supply. I think I've used up so much of that glitter paint that there's not a lot left. It's always really hard in the mix to see how much glitter is in it. It doesn't look a lot. There's more, it becomes more obvious when it's actually spread out on the plate. Love those noises. So I just get my roller and roll that out. Try and get the best coverage. And this, I'm not going to do any printing on the fabric before I start. So this will be solely print with a very high contrast. Oh, and the other thing I've been forgetting, the hot tip, make sure you've got a bowl of water to at least run your roller in to stop that glitter sticking onto your roller. The idea is to make marks that are similar to the Japanese shibori. Now, that comes from tying the fabric in sometimes some very small dots. But I'm just going to try and make some marks which I think approximate shibori. They're not going to be perfect, but I think if nothing else it might make an interesting pattern. But I want to move fairly fast. I don't want this drying on me. So this is the piece which I printed yesterday, inspired by shibori. And it does have glitter, but it's a bit more low-key than some of the pieces I'll be printing. So a combination of simple marks made with my wooden fork and the acrylic paint with the gold glitter in it. I quite like that. I had some paint left over from that project, so I decided to just print that off. And there's another shibori technique called mokume, which imitates wood grain. So again, I just did this with the fork. And this is only a very small sample piece, but I think you can see that it's a really lovely pattern, and that's something I would probably think about doing on a larger piece. So there's 3 different versions of the simplest technique of mixing acrylic with the glitter paint and then scratching back into the paint with a simple tool. first up, I'm going to be printing stars, and as you can see, I've taken a shiny magazine cover and have drawn some stars on it which I've cut out. So always remembering when you're doing this sort of project that not only do you have the stencil, but you also have the stars that you can also use directly on your plate, and you'll get two different versions. You'll get a positive and what we call a negative version. I'm rolling out a dark purple background. This is dioxazine purple. I'm going to do a solid colour block. I'm going to let that dry on my fabric. Then I'm going to clean my plate and come back in with probably my gold acrylic paint over the top. This is such a rich colour, and of course we probably associate the colours of purple and gold with royalty, because originally the purple came from a very hard to source dye which came from the body of a seashell that was known as Tyrrhenian purple. Purple was first synthetic aniline dye also developed, which took that luxury fabric and turned it into something that was in reach of the general public. So all the dyes we use these days, or a lot of the dyes we use today, I'll let that sit and dry on the plate before I pull that off. Can see the purple's coming up. I would like a stronger coverage than that, so a bit of time and a bit of weight will probably help. This is one thing you'll find, particularly if you've come from a background of paper printing with a Gelli plate. Fabric takes the paint differently and often doesn't have the same coverage as you'd expect. I put quite a bit of paint on that plate, but it still, you can see, it's got shiny white bits, various things happening to it. So I'm just going to put another layer of paint on it. I'm not really going to worry too much about it. This has turned out much better. So I've got a really good solid dark purple background colour here. What I'm going to be using is my Liquitex Gold, and there's just one trick. This paint is semi-transparent. So if I was just to put one normal coat on this, it's not going to give a good transfer. It'll work, but a bit thin. So I'm actually going to put way more paint on than I would normally to address that issue. That is a massive amount of paint I've put down there. Or I had a similar problem when I was printing the other day, and I was trying to get a good print, and making it thin just really didn't help the process. So as I say, work on this being much thicker than normal. Get that down on the surface and then take my fabric and put it down over the top. So trying to line it up as best as possible. Now you can see the indents here where the stars are, and you want to make sure to get a good print that you literally push into all of those corners to get the best possible print, because there is obviously just a little bit of an edge where the cardboard is just a little bit thicker. You want to make sure that all of that paint comes through onto your background fabric. Just take your time, it's not going to go anywhere. If you don't do this, you'll end up with stars minus points, which is definitely not something I want. I think the contact is good overall. There will be obviously up here some spare paint. I'm not worried about that. So yep, you guessed it, weight. This I will probably leave for an hour or so. I really want this to be fully dried to get a really good print. And I might even find some additional weights to put on top of this. So okay, let's see what we've got here. So this is the one with the gold colour combinations, nice. So spending the time putting pressure on all of those points seems to have worked. That's a lovely print. I'm very happy with that. Oh, I'm liking that. In this sample, I'm going to take some silver paint, which I'm going to thin out a bit with some textile medium. And then I'm going to be doing some stamping with this wine bottle cork. And I'll also play around with the tines of the wooden fork here. Follow the instructions on your textile medium, whichever one you're using. This one is 1 part textile medium to 2 parts of the paint, so I can move it on the plate funnier a little bit more. I'm dipping my cork in and making some blotches, and I'm not too fussed about them being a bit irregular. That suits me fine. And then what I'm just going to do is pull some lines out using the tines of the wooden fork. So yeah, if you're going to do this, a plastic or wooden fork, something that's not going to damage your plate, is what you're aiming for. You need to keep your plate surface looking good. I'll let that dry, and then I'm going to come back and do some more layers over it. This is the second layer of gold glitter paint I'm putting down. I actually think I could do a little bit more. And I'm going to let that one dry again and put the final coat over it next. So my final coat is going to be cad orange, which will be really bright. And I'm just going to put that under some weight. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've got some inspiration for your own work. The next video is going to be dealing with far more complex prints, which take literally, in some cases, days to dry and print. So practice with these, get inspired, get familiar with your paints that you're using, and then maybe you'll be interested in coming along and trying out some of the advanced techniques that I'll be showing you then. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you later. Bye.